How y'all doing? Hey, there we go. So I've been asked to speak on a couple items. First off, my name's Brent Hoskinson, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And I want to highlight one thing for you right now, and that's because I'm a little extra nervous today. Normally, I don't get too nervous in front of crowds, but my mother is here from Ohio. Go Bucks, right? We got an Ohio State hat right over here, so peer support at its finest. So my mother's here, so I'm a little nervous so if all of you, after I get done, will go over and talk to my mom and say what a wonderful son she has, I would really appreciate that. And if you don't think that, just lie. So again, I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is that I don't allow the symptoms of post-traumatic stress to dictate how I live my life day in and day out. So I don't allow severe anxiety, panic attacks, depression to dictate how I live my life. And I don't use substances to cope with those difficulties. It's been a long, hard journey, but it's also been a wonderful journey because I have the opportunity. My recovery affords me the opportunity to do things like this right here, to come and talk to you, to raise awareness to other people, because unfortunately, our system is built a lot toward crisis. People get to crisis and then they can get help. And that's where I was. And I don't want another person that doesn't have to deal with that to go through it. Some of you may have been there. Some of you may have gone to a really bad spot before you found help, before you found recovery. Well, if we continue to speak up, I speak out about my recovery so that others don't feel the discrimination that I felt that kept me from admitting to my diagnosis and receiving help. So I've been asked to tell a little bit of my story. I'm going to start by saying that I come from a wonderful family. I have to say that. My mom's right there, right? I would say it anyway, though. I come from a wonderful family, and that's important because family is a big part of recovery, and we can't forget that. I come from a wonderful family, a really good foundation. I have both parents. I'm very blessed to have both parents in my home growing up. I have a brother. He's wonderful, still back in Ohio, a nephew. So I have a good family. And I actually grew up, and I think it's important to highlight this. When I was in my early 20s and late teens, I thought mental health and addiction were willpower things. And a lot of people think that. And then in 2007, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening tumor. It was on my right carotid artery, and it was really scary. And to go through something like that type of trauma at a young age, it's something that you're not expecting. It's something that is out of the blue. And to go into a situation where you may not wake up. I mean, it ended up being a 10-hour procedure and everything went okay. And fortunately, I'm doing well today, so I'm very thankful for that. But it caused a lot of difficulties that I never dreamed I would go through. So I started experiencing things like panic attacks, things like severe anxiety. I mean, crippling anxiety. But I hid from it. And I found a coping means because I didn't want to admit it and go get help. I found a coping means, and for me, it was alcohol. For a lot of people, it's a lot of other things. And so that took me to a lot of bad places. But I don't want to highlight that because that's really not what's important. So I went through a lot of really bad stuff. But now I feel good. I'm happy. I live a happy, joyful life. I think that's really what we all want out of life, right? To be happy, to be joyful, to enjoy the little things and the big things, to spend time with our family, to be able to have our mother come to visit us and not be intoxicated the entire time, because there were times when that wasn't the case. So I'm grateful for my recovery, and it started with little things, but there was a lot of layers of little things. I had gone to a few treatment programs, and they didn't help me because they were pointing me toward a cookie-cutter method of treatment. They said, this is the way to recovery. Here's what you need to do. Here are the 5 things. Go do it. And it was a 12-step program, but it didn't work for me. 12 steps didn't work for me. And it's partly because it didn't address the underlying issues that I was facing. What finally helped me was an intern at a program that I went to. She came up to me and said, I heard you say something about trauma in your life, and I want to hear more about that. Interestingly enough, it was for a school project, so I hope it was sincere. It may have just been for schoolwork, but regardless, her hearing me out and taking an hour every Friday to listen to me led to me getting help for what I needed help for. For me, that included a medication to support my post-traumatic stress and the severe anxiety that I face, and that's okay. A lot of people find that they don't have to take anything, and that's awesome. One of the things that I am a huge advocate for is multiple pathways to recovery, because it is so important that we embrace that different people find recovery in different ways. So she started listening to me. So that was huge, because I had gone to the counselors and stuff, and sometimes you go to treatment, and if you've ever been there, you think to yourself, I'm going to have an opportunity to speak to someone, and you never get the opportunity to speak to someone. And it was this intern taking an interest in me that led me there. The other thing was the counselor that I had said, it doesn't have to be a bad day. I went into group one day and I was miserable. I had just drank the day before. I woke up miserable. I felt crappy. I used some choice words in group that morning to relate how I felt, because it was so bad, which I don't use that type of language. But she said something to me, and it's so simple, but it meant so much. She said, just because it started out bad doesn't mean it has to finish that way. Right? What do you like? What do you care about? What do you enjoy? So like so many other people in recovery, or starting toward that path, I didn't know what I liked anymore. I started thinking about it. I'm like, what do I like to do? I don't know. So I had to think back to a time when I did know. And what I pulled out of that was that I enjoyed yard work. I used to love taking care of my yard. Getting out on the lawnmower, cruising around. I had a 0-turn mower that had been sitting in the garage, busted for like a year. I got out and I fixed the transaxle on that mower. And which, by the way, I'm not extremely mechanically inclined, so that was progress. And I started digging ditches. I tell people sometimes that I dug ditches to get to recovery, because I started edging around the pine islands in my front yard. And I got about halfway around one, and that's when I finished for the day. It was hotter than all get out. It was summer, and I was like, okay, I can go back out tomorrow. I went that night before bed. I started reading literature based on my faith, spiritual literature. And I made that a nightly routine. That night I went to bed and I was happy. I was like, man, this has been a good day. And so that next morning I was like so excited to tell everybody. I ran in. I was like, hey, I feel good today. So I wanted to feel that again. So it was a lot of those little things that led me to recovery. And I always try to tell people, it's not climbing a mountain. It's climbing a lot of small hills that get you up to the top of the mountain. Because that's how I found it. And fortunately, I had a lot of supportive people along the way. The CPS project gave me something that helped me to hone my skills. The Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, and our executive director sitting right over there, Sherry Jenkins Tucker, such a wonderful, wonderful woman. Yeah, please give her a round of applause. You guys are going to hear from her later. incredible stuff. And I don't know whether she saw something in me or if I just beat down their door enough that they gave up and, just said, okay, we'll give you a job. But it was one of the two. You can talk about that later if you want. But so I found the CPS project. That gave me something to care about, that I could give back to other people, give back to the community. I didn't even know exactly what all I was going to do, but I knew I learned a lot of stuff about peer support, about being there for other people that I could have used. And so now I want to give that back to other people. I'm also a certified addiction recovery empowerment specialist. Neil Kaltenecker just walked in the room. Give her a hand of applause. No. Oh, okay. Woo! Oh, I'm sorry. Neil Campbell. I am still getting used to that, Neil. I'm sorry. Neil Campbell. She changed her name like a year ago, so you would think I would have it by now. But, and those two ladies, if you have an opportunity to talk to them, if you want to talk to Neil, bring up her grandson, and you won't get away from her. But they make it a recovery. Because Neil is the executive director on the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, and Sherry is the executive director of the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. In the state of Georgia, it's about recovery. I get to do some work with the National Coalition for Mental Health Recovery, and one of the things I experience is you see a lot of divisions in other states. Not in our state, because those two women work hand in hand hard to make it about recovery and about people getting better, about wellness, about people living a joyful and happy life. And so that's what brings me here. That's why I'm here.